Hello students, welcome to Btech360 and Career 360. There seems to be something happening wrong at the placement level at IITs. And I've been noticing this consistently for every filing that any of these IITs does to any of the Ministry of Education, Government of India departments. And it's consistent across the spectrum in the sense that not a single IIT I can say is pretty much doing very well in terms of placements. And this is actually data that is submitted to the Government of India, Ministry of Education for the ranking purposes. And which is where the big question mark comes in. Is it that they're manipulating data to get a higher rank? Or is it that the placements are actually low? Or is it that genuinely the students are moving for higher education? Because what is happening is more and more seats are being increased at IITs, but the number of students, absolute number of placements that are happening at IITs is falling every single year. And to that extent, every single student who is getting admitted into IIT, the incremental number is actually opting for higher education. Is that a genuine case, or is there some kind of a manipulation, or is there some kind of a data inaccuracy that's creeping into the system just because the IITs want to be ranked better in the NIRF ranking system, which is done by the Government of India, Ministry of Education? Let me explain to you what I am saying here with numbers. The question is, are placements at IITs falling is the question that I'm asking today, and you judge for yourself. I'm going to show you numbers. It is for you to draw your own conclusion of what's happening, right? Before I move further, a lot of students also want to talk to us, want to understand, want to be counseled by us, want to talk to a counselor. So what we did was we actually opened a helpline which is 8130376334. 8130376334. Send a message Btech, and one of our counselors will call you, and you can ask all your questions. It is a free counseling, mind you. If you obviously want some admission-based counseling, it will be paid for. But to begin with, you can call, and this is a free number. And please do subscribe to Btech360. This is our channel for anything to do with Btech, so do subscribe for that. Now the big question that I'm coming to. Let me tell you what happens. All the engineering colleges in this country who want to be ranked by the Government of India for the NIRF, which is National Institutional Ranking Framework, submit data to the Ministry of Education, Government of India. And this is the data that's submitted. If you notice it clearly here, National Institutional Ranking Framework, Ministry of Education, Government of India, right? And it's a data capturing system for engineering. Now these are 4-year programs. So the moment you say engineering, actually they submit only the 4-year Btech programs only and nothing else, right? Now this is the data that's submitted, where every year they talk of how many students are there for the 4-year program and the 2-year program, which is MTech program, of course, right? And for past many years they submit from 1920, the last 5 years, 6 years you have the data. And when you talk of that, for example, you look at this particular data, which is academic year, number of first year students intake in the first year, which is sanctioned intake, number of first year students admitted, which is the actual admitted students, and for the academic year again they talk about it, number of students admitted through lateral entry if there is any, because some colleges also have lateral entry, and then number of students graduating in minimum stipulated time, which is within 4 years how many students graduated from the number admitted, right? For example, here 826 were admitted, 697 graduated, and number of students placed, from the number of students who graduated, how many students were placed, and what is the median salary. And it also talks of another number, which is number of students selected for higher education. Now what we noticed is, when you pick up good branches, say computer science, the number of students who are opting for higher studies moves down dramatically. But when you go to core, the number of students opting for higher education moves up. This, in our opinion, is a function of the placeability or the placement opportunities that come for the students in that particular branch, in that particular college. And this is a clear trend that we noticed. The better the branch and the better the college, the lesser the number of students who are opting for higher studies because they're getting placed. And assuming they're not getting placed, the number of students who are moving for higher studies also increases to that extent. So there is a direct correlation between the placement opportunities and students who said, okay, I'm not getting placement, let me move for higher studies. There's a direct correlation. I'll explain to you how it works. Now look at this data for 21-22. We're talking of IIT Kharagpur here. This is Institute of Technology, Guwahati, sorry, this is IIT Guwahati, right? The number of students who intake in 21-22, which passed out in 24-25 is what we're talking of. So 21-22, the intake was 902 was the sanctioned intake, and all the 902 seats were filled in. If you carefully notice, 902 here and 902 here, right? And the number of students who actually graduated in 24-25, 21-22 they entered, in 24-25 they graduated, is all 902 graduated, which means not a single student was left out, whatever, right? Of these 902 students, 663 students were placed. So the placement percentage is about 74-75%. 900 students is graduated and 663 students actually were placed. And then what happens? The number of students which were not placed, if many of them move for higher education. So there is this column, number of students selected for higher studies is 209. Now this number just 2 years back was 51. Right? When the intake was lesser, the intake was, the graduating was 697 and 637 were placed. So the intake was lesser, and to that extent the higher studies also was lesser. Now if you notice this thing, over the last 3 years, the number of students placed is 639 in 2023, 23-24 it was 658, and 24-25 it's 663. So not much increase in the number of students who got placed in absolute numbers. But the number of students who graduated increased from 697 to 902. So what's happening is, as the number of students graduating actually increases, or as the number of students who were admitted increases, and because of which the number of students who graduated also increases, they're not getting placed because in absolute numbers, the number of students who are getting placed is almost similar. But the admitted seat intake has increased dramatically at IITs, and all of them are ultimately moving for higher studies. I'll show you another example. This I showed you of Guwahati. Let me show you another example also. This is of IIT Roorkee. In IIT Roorkee, in 21-22, the number of students who were admitted, intake was 1100, 1091 students got admitted. 1091 students. Of this 1091 students, 1067 students graduated, which means about 98-99% students graduated. They passed that examination also and became bachelors. Right? And of this 1067 students, 711 students were placed. Now if you compare this over the last 3 years, 2 years back it was 733, last year it was 769, and this year it's 711. So the absolute number of students who actually have been placed has only fallen over the last 2-3 years. The absolute number of students who actually got placed has only fallen, while the number of students who graduated has increased from 911 to 1067, which is about 13-14% increase. But the number of students who actually were placed in absolute number itself has fallen. And not just that, even the median salary, which was 19.69 lakh, has fallen down to 18 lakh. So you actually are now seeing a drop in the absolute number of students who were placed, an increase in the absolute number of students who were admitted and graduated, and a drop in the median salary at this level. And I'm talking now of IIT Roorkee. Here it is, IIT Roorkee, and this is Minister of Education, Government of India. Everything is about here. Right? And what happens then? Because they are also submitting it to the NIRF, they can't say that the students were not placed. So what happens? They invariably move that entire bucket to students having opted for higher education. What is the option student has? When the student is not getting placed, they're not going to sit at home, so they will say, I'm going to study further. And that's what happened here. The number of students who actually moved for higher studies 2 years back was 178. This year it's 356, which is 100% increase. 100% increase. So you actually have a drop in median salary, you have a drop in the absolute number of students who were placed, you had an increase in the absolute number of students who graduated, and then you have a 100% increase in the number of students who are opting for higher studies. And this is very consistent, what I tell you, right? This, for example, IIT Delhi. IIT Delhi is an exception in the certain sense, because here the number of students who this IIT Delhi of course is very premium in that sense, right? So they do manage to work on the students and get them placed, or maybe they're giving very, very honest information out here. That 986 students is the number of students graduated. It's a growth from 835. We're talking about 15-20% growth. And the number of students who actually were placed moved up from 676 to 818. And the number of students who actually moved to higher studies is very minimal at 73. When you compare it with 986 students graduated, about 7-8% only. Whereas in some institutions, about 25, 30, 40% students are moving for higher studies. That is the worry that we're talking about. I'll show you a summary of this entire thing. By the way, let me show you IIT Kharagpur. This is another thing. A lot of you would also come back saying, listen, they might have a 5-year program or an integrated program and all. Now we look at this very, very closely. We also written to many of these IITs asking for more information. They've, as of now, not given us any information back. If and when they come back to us, we'll also publish that also, or I'll show you a video of that also. Now look at IIT Kharagpur. In all, the Btech programs, and this is for the intake of 2021 and 21-22, I'm showing you. Let's talk of 22, right? Because this is the batch that's passing out, right? 941 students was the Btech and 319 was a BS program, integrated BS program, right? So 941 is in all 319, in all 1260. The reason why I'm showing this so that you are very clear that the questions don't come back saying, sir, it may be integrated program, it might be a 3+2 program or 4+1 program and all. I'm showing this particular data to you so that we are very, very clear. Right? Remember, 941 is the Btech intake. These are all Btech programs across all the branches. And these are all BS programs across all the branches. For Btech, the intake is 941. And for BS, the intake is 319. In the NIRF document, what they show is 943. Which is the 941 that I showed you earlier. 1-2 lateral might have happened, and 943 is what they show across the board. So they're only showing the Btech program, they're not showing the BS program. So don't confuse or come back saying, sir, the students are being shown as going for higher studies because there might be an integrated BS program 3+2 or 4+1. No, it is not the case. We are only talking of engineering. The data capturing is for engineering. It's not for pure sciences. 2, it is only for Btech programs, and that's the reason why it's engineering, and the numbers are tallying with what I showed you earlier. For the JOSA seat matrix is what I've taken for that purposes, right? And it's 943. Here now you notice this, the number of students who graduated moved up from 580 to 882, almost a 60% jump or 55% jump. But the number of students who were placed moved down from 460 and 517 to 438. This is IIT Kharagpur. I was showing IIT Kharagpur now, Kharagpur, right? So the number of students admitted and graduated is about 55-60% more, whereas the absolute number of students who actually got placed is only moved down. Because of this, the median salary, which is 24 lakh rupees, has also gone down to 20.74 lakh rupees. So, and the number of students who actually moved for higher education moved up from 40 numbers in 2 years back to 367. 367, a 9-time jump. A 9-time jump from 40 to 367. This is criminal. This is not possible. But it seems to be happening in IIT Kharagpur. I am showing what they have submitted. I don't have any other data. What I am showing is what is the data that they submitted themselves. And this is the problem that I have, that are genuinely the other placements falling, or is there something that is being hidden behind which we are unable to understand? We wrote to each of these IITs, they have not yet responded. They might have got shocked with the kind of questions that we asked them, because I am only analyzing their own data and submitting it back to them. So what we did was, we actually did a complete analysis of all the 22 IITs for which we got the data. For IIT Patna, we still don't have data. So there are 23 IITs, but for 22 IITs we got the data. And this is the filing for 2026 NIRF data, which is 24-25 placement data is what we're talking of. As far as I know, in 25-26, the placements have only gone down and not gone up. So what you're going to see is much worse picture than what you have, which is the 24-25 data, for which we actually have authenticated on an affidavit submitted data by these IITs to the Government of India, right? And when we took out about 9 IITs, which have very high percentage of students opting for higher studies, the admitted students is 6,758, the graduate is 6,204, right? Which means we are dealing with about 93-94% of the students who graduated. Placed is 4,207. In the previous year, in 24, it was 4,221, which has fallen down to 4,207, right? So which essentially means that we're dealing with a 4% kind of a drop, right? And then the number of students who moved for higher studies over the last 2 years, it was 830 2 years back. This year it's 1,767. It's a 112% jump. 112% jump in the number of students who are opting for higher studies, whereas the absolute number of students who are actually getting placed year on year has fallen between last year and this year, right? Now the other part of it, no, it is actually less than 1% drop, right? And then placement against graduated. So now I'll start looking at how many students actually graduated, how many were placed. When I look at that, it's 67.81%. It was 79% 2 years back. Because the intake is increasing, graduated is increasing, the absolute number of students placed is decreasing, and now the median salary also is decreasing. Higher studies to graduated. Now, how do they cover this up? By saying that, listen, they did not opt for placement, so we did not get them placed. The students who preferred higher studies after graduation was 17% earlier, it's now 28.48%. Within the top 9 IITs opting for higher studies. So we're talking of a subset, and within that also there is an increase. And the median salary fell down from 19,76,000 to 17.47 lakh. So when you look at it in perspective, 29% increase in admitted, 27% increase in the graduated class, 8% is the only growth in placement that you have over the 2 years. In fact, over the last year, it's actually fallen, right? The number of students who are moving for opting for higher studies is grown up by 112%. If this is the core of the problem, the students who are getting placed after getting graduated has fallen by about 14.66%. The median salary has fallen by 12%, whereas the intake has grown dramatically by 29%. So you actually are dealing with it, and these top 9 IITs where students are opting for higher studies. And it is not that all IITs are getting into that. Again, I am repeating. There are some IITs where the number of students who are opting for higher studies is much lesser, whereas here we are very high. I'll show you that also as data. Right? For example, you look at this. These are least students in the 7 IITs where the number of students opting for higher studies is very less. Here it's actually much less. Here the admitted is 20% jump, graduate is 20% jump, place is 19% jump. That's because students are not opting for higher studies, so you actually see the placement moving up. There, when the students are opting for higher studies, obviously there is a cover up that's happening very clearly, right? And higher studies is 32% only jump, whereas there it's 112% jump, if you recall. The placement percentage is just about maintained because the overall numbers are being maintained. For example, if you see this number, the 2,437 in 2 years back has jumped to 2,898. But because the intake also is increased, it's just about 0.98% is a drop. Otherwise, it's almost similar what we're talking of. What was 87% has become 86%. Whereas if you go back to the earlier slide, it's much different, right? And the number of students who are opting for higher studies versus graduate is only 10.6%. But the median salary also here also has dropped by 14%. Now, if you look at this in perspective, and I'll show you the 9 IITs where the biggest, increase in students being pushed for higher studies is happening, or the placements are dropping, both are happening simultaneously. Now, if you look at that here, IIT Kharagpur, 2 years back, the number of students opting for higher studies was only 40. This side is 367, a jump of 603%. IIT Roorkee, it was 178 2 years back, it's now 356. In fact, 33% of the batch of IIT Roorkee is moving for higher studies. 42% of the batch of IIT Kharagpur is moving for higher studies. 31% of IIT Tirupati batch is moving for higher studies. 28% of IIT Bombay is moving for higher studies. 28% of IIT Jodhpur is moving for higher studies. 23% of IIT Guwahati is moving for higher studies. 22% of IIT Mandi, 21% of IIT Kanpur, and 21% of Gandhinagar. This is actual data that we are showing, right? So if you now look at it, the number of students who are moving for higher studies is also moving up dramatically. It was 178 earlier, it's now 356, double, right? It was 154 here in IIT Bombay, it's moved to 287. It was 56 here in IIT Jodhpur, it's now 117, a jump of 154%. In Guwahati, it was 51, jumped to 209, a jump of 317%. In IIT Mandi, it was 24, moved to 61. In IIT Kanpur, it was 239, moved to 257, and so on and so forth. Why is it that in most of these IITs, the number of students who are moving for higher studies is almost doubling, and the placement actually in absolute numbers also is falling, and obviously as a percentage of students graduate also is falling dramatically, and the median salary also is dropping. And again, I am saying this is the 9 IITs, the top IITs where the most number of percentage of students as proportion is moving for higher studies, and to that extent the placement also is a problem. And if I have to talk of the opting for higher studies least, right? For example, in the case of IIT Hyderabad, only 10% students move for higher studies, whereas there it's 35-40%, remember. In IIT Delhi, only 7% move for higher studies. Bhillai only 6%, Jammu only 5%, Indore only 5%, Goa only 3%, and Varanasi only 2%. So you have two extremes. About 9-10 IITs, about 25, 30, 40% students are moving for higher studies, and to that extent the placement is coming down. And in a few IITs, the number of students moving for higher studies is 2 to 3, 4, 5%, which is legit, which is possible, which is correct also possibly, right? But to that extent, the placement also keeps moving up. So the higher the placement, the lower the number of students are moving for higher studies, and vice versa. And again, I repeat, it is a very clear case for me of saying that we are only talking of engineering, we are only talking of Btech here and nothing else. Now let me show you colleges placement rates also, where the most number of students are moving for higher studies. When you look at it in Kharagpur, the placement rate from those graduated fell down from 79% to 50%. It's a massive drop of 29%. Roorkee 80% became 67%. Tirupati 63% became 58%. Bombay 81% became 72%. Jodhpur 82% became 72%. Guwahati 92% placement became 74%. IIT Mandi 89% became 78%. And I'm talking of percentage of students placed from the students graduated. That's the ratio we're talking about here. When they talk of placement, they remove the students opting for higher studies, saying that they did not even opt for placement, so why would I place them? And then calculate the percentage when it comes to 90%, 95%, 100% and all. But I am now talking from the class that graduated. Kanpur 70% becomes 71%, that's good, and so on and so forth. But these are the numbers that you're talking of. And by the way, where the 7 IITs where the least number of students are opting for higher studies, again when you look at that, here the placement percentage seems to be working out well. Like IIT Delhi 81% became 83%. This one 80 became 69 of course. This IIT Jammu 75 became 77. BSU Varanasi 96% became 97%. Goa 78% became 79%. Right. So very clearly you see a very clear correlation about the placement potential versus the students who are being pushed to opt for higher studies. Now when I look at that, I calculated for all the 22 IITs now. Till now it showed you 9 of the best and 7 of the worst in terms of the data. If I take all the 22, because we don't have data for IIT Patna, so we could only have 22, right? And this is the summary of the placements at IITs, right? The total students admitted is 13,243, which is a 23.25% jump. We are taking it from 2324 here. What was 10,744 here become 30,243. Graduated jumped from 9,973 to 12,196 because you actually increase the intake by 23%, your graduated also increased by 22.29%. The placed increased by 11.35% across all 22 IITs we say. Now of course there are worst case situations there like Kharagpur and all, which showed a dramatic fall in the placements. The number of students who were moving for higher studies moved up by 108.41% because of those institutions where you could not place, so you pushed them for higher studies. So what was 1,153 2 years back is now 2,403. A 108% jump. Now this is very crucial. 1153 has become 2403 of the people who are moving for higher studies, right? And to that extent, the placement percentage fell down from 93.33% to 93.6%. This what we're talking about is the placement percent that they claim because they removed the number of students who moved for higher studies. But if I were to take it as a percentage of the class that graduated, what was 82.54% fell down by to 75.16%, a drop of 9%. The placement for the class that graduated fell down by 9%, and the median salary, which was 18.3 lakh rupees, has come down to 16.21 lakh, which is a drop of 11%. So what we're talking about is a 9% drop in placement, right, and 11.41% drop in median salary. We are talking of a drop, right? And to that extent, how do they cover that? By showing the number of students who are moving for higher studies, which was earlier 11.56%, has become 19.7%. So 20% of the class of IITs is being now shown as opting for higher studies. Now that's a dangerous thing because you go back 5, 6, 7 years back, this would not be the case. And again I repeat, we are only talking of Btech, we are not talking of BS programs. We are talking of only Btech programs and anything which is the 4-year program, because that's the data that we are looking at this point in time. Now, does this worry me? Yes, for sure. Because you simply can't have the seats being increased while every incremental student who is joining an IIT is not getting placed, because the absolute number of students who are actually getting placed is actually dropping. How do you do that? It was 8,232 about 2 years back, and you increase the seat by 23%, but the increase in the number of students who placed is only 11%. So to that extent, what you saw is the placement percentage against graduated fell by 9%, and the median salary also fell by 11%. All this while the fee at IITs possibly has also increased over the last 3-4 years. Now that is a report card of IITs placements, and this should worry any one of us and every one of us. What should we do to ensure that our best kids actually get what is promised to them or what has been sold to them by some other coaching institutions, which is that you get into an IIT, your future is secure, you get a good placement of 20 LPA, 21 LPA, 22 LPA. Now I have few hunches, by the way, in this whole thing. The hunches are this, like I'll go back here. The hunches are this. In my opinion, IIT Kharagpur did not place so few students. They actually placed more students. Like if I go back to IIT Kharagpur, let's talk of IIT Kharagpur for a moment. Now this is IIT Kharagpur, right? In IIT Kharagpur, what they show is 951 students graduated, 880 students graduated, and 438 students placed, right? And they show 361 students as moving for higher studies. So remember this, 882 graduated, 438 placed, and 367 moving for higher studies. In my opinion, a lot of these students also would be here. This would be about 700, 750. Just that if you include this here, then this median salary, which is already falling from 24 lakh to 20.74 lakh, would be coming down to 15, 16 lakh rupees or even less than that. Because we know for a fact that even in IIT, students are getting placed at 6 lakh, 7 lakh, 8 lakh and all. But they don't want to spoil that name saying that the 20 LPA is a false claim. So what they do is they shave off the bottom quarter of those students who actually got placed at a lesser salary and they show it off the books, off the records. Because if they show this to be about 700, which means they need to add 262 data, the entire median salary will come down to 11, 12 lakh rupees. That they don't want to say because that is against the entire sales pitch of these IITs. So my opinion is this, that IITs are hiding some data. IITs possibly are fudging data. IITs place more number of students than what is being shown. But most of the students are shown off the books, off the records. They do get placed at a lesser salary, but the maximum LPA and the median LPA that you hear of IITs is a false claim, as much as the placement percentage being lesser is also a false claim. The placement percentage is higher, the median salary is lower, and the highest salary might be a truth, but that's anecdotal. And that, in my opinion, is the fact that IITs don't want you to know. IITs don't want you to know that their median salary is not 20 lakh, but 13, 14 lakh. Their placement percentage is not whatever is being shown because they moved it to higher education, but much lesser than that. The fact that every incremental student is not getting placed is something that they don't want you to know. And this is something that we want you to know because then only you will be taking a more informed decision. I hope this helps you. If you really are liking our stories, and do subscribe to Btech360. And if you want to talk to any one of us or a counselor, 8130-376-334, send a message Btech and one of our counselors will call you and help you out. Thank you so much. Namaste.